Hi everybody. Let's dive into the mechanics of how the home inspection usually fits into the whole purchase process. Theoretically, a home buyer can get an inspection done on a home before they made an offer. That way, the buyer would know a ton about the condition of the home before they even negotiated the price with the seller. They wouldn't need to have a second negotiation over repairs and repair credits later. But that's not the way it's normally done. Except in really hot markets, buyers don't usually want to spend money on home inspections until they've already reached an agreement with the seller on price and terms. Normal home sales usually have two negotiations. First, the original price and terms negotiation that led to the written contract, and second, the negotiations over any repairs or repair credits after the buyer's inspections have been done. Here's the mechanics of it. The contract the buyer signed with the seller would have a clause in it along the lines that the buyer has X number of days to inspect the property and the surrounding area, and during that time, if the buyer doesn't like what they find, the buyer can cancel the contract and get a full refund of their earnest money deposit. Depends how your contract is written. This clause is often called a buyer inspection contingency clause. The customary inspection period varies from place to place, but it's usually between 1 and 2 weeks. The inspection period in your contract will be for a specific number of days. You need to know exactly what it is and when it ends. Be careful, if you find a deal killer after the buyer inspection contingency period in your contract ends, you may not be able to cancel the contract without losing all of your earnest money deposit. It all depends on how your contract is written. That means as soon as you get a signed contract with the seller, that you should schedule all of your inspections as soon as possible so you can complete all of your inspections before your buyer inspection contingency period ends. What usually ends up happening is the home inspector finds a bunch of problems with the house. Most aren't serious, but some might be big. The buyer typically thinks, I'm paying a premium price for this house. I want it to be in premium condition. I want the seller to fix all the problems, big and small. The seller, on the other hand, typically thinks, I'm already selling this house below market value. It's not a new home. These problems are normal wear and tear for a home this age. I'm not going to fix anything. And so the second negotiations, the repair negotiations, begin. These repair negotiations are often more contentious than the original price negotiations. That's weird because the original price negotiations were probably for hundreds of thousands of dollars, and the repair negotiations might be for less than $1,000. But somehow the repair negotiations often end up being more contentious than the original price negotiations. There's some weird human psychological things going on here, and I'm not exactly sure what they all are. Part of it is, no doubt, that buyers are starting to get scared after they sign the contract. They were all excited about the contract negotiations, but now they're afraid they got carried away and they're paying too much. In short, the buyers are getting buyer's remorse. Buyer's remorse is very common. The seller might also feel remorse. They might feel they were pressured by their real estate agent into selling the house too cheap. So they become, let's say, uncooperative. Both the buyer and the seller start feeling fear that they gave away too much during the price negotiations, and now they're both ticked and taking it out in the repair negotiations. Then the home buyer gets the home inspection report and freaks out. Any seeds of buyer's remorse the buyer had now take full bloom. I've often found buyers and sellers who were reasonable during the contract negotiations become jerks in the much smaller repair negotiations. But to be fair, I should add that sometimes the problem isn't the buyer or the seller as much as it is the agents of the buyers or the agents of the sellers. Usually after some drama, the seller agrees to repair a few things, or instead of making repairs, the seller agrees to contribute X number of dollars towards the buyer's closing costs. Or reduce the sales price. Occasionally that happens. Sellers can feel trapped. In normal sales, by this point, the seller may have a contract to buy another home. They may have already made plans to move out of the house in 2 or 3 weeks. Emotionally, the buyers have already moved out. Those sellers think the repair requests are stupid, but what are they going to do? If the buyer cancels, they'll have to start the whole process all over again. If they have another house under contract, they'd probably lose that house. The sellers feel trapped. The buyers feel trapped too. In a normal sale, they might have given notice to cancel their current lease and have movers scheduled. If they canceled the contract, the buyers might have to scramble to find a place to live. At this point, these buyers feel trapped, just like the sellers. The buyers may not have any better options than accepting repairs they can get from the sellers and moving forward with buying the house. So, often in a normal sale, both the buyer and the seller feel trapped and are ticked off, but they both reluctantly agree to a short list of repairs the seller will make, or to a seller credit, or whatever, and the sale moves forward and closes. Now, occasionally the home inspection finds something that's a complete deal killer for the buyer, and the buyer just cancels the contract without even trying to negotiate any repairs or a price reduction. Also, occasionally, the buyer and the seller won't be able to come to an agreement on repairs, and after a lot of acrimony, the buyer cancels the contract. In both cases, however, if the cancellation was done according to Hoyle, according to the buyer inspection contingency clause written in their contract, the potential buyer would likely get their earnest money deposit back. But, and this is important, the potential buyer would still be out the cost of the home inspection, the termite inspection, and any real estate agent or attorney costs, and anything else they paid out of their own pockets. It can quickly add up to $1,000 or more the potential buyer would lose if they canceled the contract. It's absolutely amazing to me how contentious these repair negotiations can get. I think a lot of it is because both the buyer and the seller feel trapped. Well, they are kind of trapped, and people just act weird when they're trapped. In landlord-to-renter sales, however, the pressure forcing a buyer and a seller to come to an agreement on repair negotiation is a ton less. If the sale doesn't go through because you can't come to an agreement on repairs, it's no big deal for the seller. They'll just continue renting the place to you or to someone else. For you, the buyer, it's a bigger deal. You'd be out any money you spent on inspections if you canceled the contract. But at least you probably won't have to scramble to find a place to live like a normal buyer who canceled their contract might. Fortunately, in your case too, you already live in the house and you already know a lot about the house, so your home inspections are a lot less likely to find things that surprise you and make you want to cancel the contract or negotiate large changes to the contract. What I'm trying to say here is that you should be aware that repair negotiations can be surprisingly contentious, and that buyers in landlord-to-renter sales probably have a lot less leverage in repair negotiations than buyers in normal sales. Okay, one more video and we're done with the home inspection section.